This Toolbox, I'm going to try out one of the most featureful carousel frameworks out there called SplideJS. Plus, in the shorts, I talk about the state of the Octoverse, why the creator of Svelte just got hired by Vercel. Plus, we're looking for teachers at LinkedIn Learning. It's Wednesday, November 17th, and this is episode 12. So let's get started. Hello everyone, this is Repo, and I stream about front-end and full-stack tools Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific. So follow me and subscribe on all the social media things at Planet of the Web for more content. And if you want to watch any past episodes, make sure you take a look at my blog, repo.org. So this week, I'm trying out a new set of streaming tools. It's called Ecamm Live, and the one thing it has over StreamYard is that it lets you use your own animated overlays, so you can create some videos with transparencies. However, as you could tell with the spotty intro, I am trying out something completely different, so I'm not fully used to it. I think one of the disadvantages is that it doesn't actually let me see your comments or like display your comments live. I think it's just the current version of the platform doesn't quite support that yet, but I'm sure it'll get there. I'm also restreaming with restream.io onto YouTube, so we'll see how all of that goes. I'm hoping it goes well. But as usual, let me know in the comments if you have any problems or if you like anything that I'm doing. That would be great. I don't know if I'm going to continue using this, so please just let me know. I really would appreciate it. Now, I'm also always wondering about the things that you do, so make sure that you leave me some comments. I don't really see any questions or anybody quite yet in the chat here, so I'm going to go to the shorts section, and you're going to see the very cool animations. Let's do it. So this week I'm doing something slightly different with the shorts. I'm covering some news content that I find interesting and I think you should probably know about, as well as a few tools. So normally it's just tools, but I'm introducing this concept of adding a few different little sort of pieces of news that I thought were interesting. So first off is this thing called the state of the Octoverse. So the Octoverse is essentially what's happening on GitHub. And normally this is a presentation that you see in GitHub Universe, usually by the CEO, Nat Friedman, or now there's a new CEO. And I was expecting to see it in the GitHub Universe conference, but so I didn't make it, and they actually released it a little bit late. I mean, this is maybe a couple of weeks after Universe. Maybe it's been a week. I don't know. Time flies. But it's a really interesting report because it sort of tells you what's happening, not just with GitHub, but also with the entire web. So much of the web platform is at GitHub. And so it's a really good report. So if you go to, let's see, let's try, I have these little overlays now. So you can go to octoverse.github.com and you can see this report. It's a pretty cool website. So I would love to know how they did this because they're really pretty awesome at creating these kind of websites that do a lot of cool stuff and have a lot of interesting data in them. So essentially, one of the interesting things that they're doing this year is that they're using the telemetry from 4 million repositories, which I guess is all the repositories that they have at GitHub, in order to sort of bring you some aggregated data about what's happening on the web. So you're going to see it's like popular languages, what are people doing with different types of files, and so on and so forth. And then they also did some surveys of over 12,000 developers. Now, usually I love the Stack Overflow annual survey, but this is another piece of data. any piece of data that you are going to get is going to be, a little bit tilted. So take it with a grain of salt. However, GitHub does have all of the really big projects in their platform. So it kind of, they go through and show you a lot of different trends. And then also things about how you can be more productive and sort of enjoy a more pleasurable experience, hopefully. So in terms of numbers, you can see that since 2021, or there's been 60 million new users to GitHub, the platform, in 2021. 73 million total developers, 84% of Fortune 100 companies have a GitHub enterprise account. So this is kind of the pro account for businesses. That's huge numbers. I mean, GitHub is the place where people put all their code, especially open source code. 61 million new repositories and 170 million pull requests merged. And you can take a look at some of this data. Of course, since I guess a lot of the development gets done in North America, most people live in the US and Europe. Asia is always growing pretty big, so it's something that you have to watch out for. And this is interesting. Always good to see the sort of list of the top languages every year, so you can see sort of what's trending. And a while back, you saw Python sort of overtake Java as sort of a more popular programming language. That was always pretty cool. TypeScript has been on the rise, but look, from 2020 to 2021, there's been no change. I know that with the pandemic, some of these numbers are probably a little bit different or weird. I don't know if that would have any impact on the adoption of TypeScript, if TypeScript has stalled, or if it's going to continue to rise. I think we're going to have to wait till next year to see what's going on there. Now, one language that I'm tracking and that I will be talking about next week is Rust. I'm really interested because so many things are sort of being developed in Rust. So I'm really interested to see that it shows up in here somewhere, and then see if it becomes sort of a player. I think what you're seeing is a lot of places that generally use JavaScript are sort of moving to Rust. But you know what? I'm probably saying too much. More about that next week. Now, the next piece of news that I thought was super important is that the company called Vercel, so you may know them as the developers of, I think they developed my favorite terminal application, which is called Hyper, but they also, it used to be called Now, and they changed their name to Vercel, probably one of my least favorite name changes because I can always remember Now, but not Vercel. But they also have been sort of absorbing a bunch of different tools into their platform, which I thought was pretty interesting. And so for example, they are kind of the owners. Not, things are open source on the web, but what we're seeing now is companies kind of acquiring pieces of software. And making open source software has been really difficult online because developers tend to not have a source of income or do something maybe on the site, uh, you know, do something on the side, I mean, and it's really difficult for developers to sort of be able to make money and sort of focus on a project. So you've seen some exceptions to that. So for example, the developer of Vue.js, Evan Yu, has now recently, or maybe a few years ago, been able to sort of go completely 100% into that project. And he's doing a great job, but it's difficult for upcoming companies. So one of the interesting things that they have done is that they have actually hired Rich Harris, the creator of Svelte. So they have hired him to actually uh, make the web faster. They say both Svelte and Vercel want to make building for the web more enjoyable and fast. Svelte has been voted the most loved framework. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, I have a course on Svelte. If you haven't tried it out, the killer app of Svelte is that it sort of precompiles your code so that when you see it online, it's a lot faster because it's got a lot of there's a lot of advantages to precompiling some code so that you don't have to rerun it every time, which is what happens when you go to a JavaScript page that's much more optimized. It's really a fun framework. It just hasn't gotten a lot of super critical mass. There's a lot of other things. React, of course, would be the obvious one. I think React is sort of eating the world right now. It looks like I am having some the ability to see some comments. Let's see. Yeah, so actually, if you send me some comments, looks like I can actually display them. So that's fantastic. I was really wondering about this software. So it looks like Africa represents 1% of the users. Whoa, yeah, there's a lot of really interesting data in there in that Octoverse report. All right, so make sure you add me some comments. I would really love to see more. For some reason, I'm not seeing them on LinkedIn, the LinkedIn preview, so I don't know what's going on there. But I can actually see them in my restream sort of comment section, which is great. Better. All right, so I'm really curious as to what Rich is going to do. Rich is, Svelte is amazing, and you can tell that the guy is really smart. It does say in here that this will enable Rich to work on Svelte full time. It's very interesting for a company like Vercel. So Vercel sells services for the web, and actually, I do have a Vercel account, and I have some of my domain names in there, and I've played around with some projects. I've kept that account because it's a super great company. And Guillermo Roche is usually a speaker at GitHub Universe. This year, they have another platform that you may have heard about called Next.js that is pretty amazing as well. And they have made some interesting hires. So they have brought in these developers that are actually the core developers for these products, and they're giving Rich a time to work on Svelte full time. If he was able to do Svelte in his part time, I can't wait to see what he's going to do full time when he just, can focus on just that without having to do anything else. Also, it would be interesting how Vercel absorbs and sort of integrates maybe Svelte into the sort of into its own sort of set of tools. I'm very interested about this hire, and I thought it was super interesting, so I just heard about it the other day. All right, so let's go to some pretty cool new tools. Also, I have some other people joining in. Let's see. Yeah, so hello, Jakub. Super nice. And Javier, he was here last week, so super nice to see you again. Excellent. So let's talk about a couple of cool little sites and tools that I thought were super interesting. First one is sort of a little game called Coding Font. So let's see. It looks like, so this is codingfont.com. And what was really interesting was that it's sort of a game to help you pick out your favorite development font. So a lot of us, I think, obsess about the font that we use. We spend so much time coding that we want something that's super comfortable. And I have my own preferences. So for me, I like something that is a little bit thinner and that has a very large X height. So X height would be the height of the text. Sort of, it's technically the height of the letter X, but technically it's sort of the height from underneath the ascender. So the top of this little F is like what they call the ascender. And then the bottom of something like the Y is the descender. So notice that this has a lot of room for sort of the main part of the font and not a lot of room for the ascenders and descenders. I prefer that, and I prefer a thinner font because it fits more, and I'm definitely doing code demos all the time, so I want a lot of stuff on screen, but I like a font that looks bigger when it's at a small size. Now, both of these look pretty good, but this one is getting, for me, a little bit wide, and these are all sort of the same width fonts, so they're, they take up the same amount of horizontal space, but I for this one, I think I would prefer this Tech Mono. And then it just kind of goes through and it lets you pick between two. This one, Sign Mono, I think I like it better. I don't like fonts that are just, this is big, and I think the X height is pretty good here, but I don't know. I don't like maybe the spacing or the way that it looks, but I don't like the way that these G's are looking here. But I'm gonna choose this one anyways. And you kind of go through and you find, make decisions between the fonts, sort of like a font battle. And once you go through all these, then so let's do Fire Code, which I like. I love JetBrains Mono. And then you go through and you kind of, after going through all these fonts, you sort of do like a battle. So look at the side card over here where you can, once you've gone through all these, then you're going to go to a second tier matchup of your fonts. Kind of an interesting and cool way of somebody to do a project to help you like pick out your own fonts. So I really thought that was pretty neat. All right, so if you're wondering what I use, I love this font called JetBrains Mono, and let's see, we will put this up on screen. So this is the one that I use on my projects currently. I do like how it looks. So notice the very large X height with very kind of short ascenders and descenders, but it's very clear and spaced out pretty nicely. And it does have ligatures. So yeah, increase height for a better reading experience. So it is a little bit taller and thinner, adapted to reading code. So this is my favorite, and it does have ligatures. Now, not everybody loves ligatures. So for example, like when you do arrow functions, it kind of gives you a longer arrow with a greater than sign that is integrated, or this plus plus sign. Not everyone likes it, and I really did not like it, but I started using it and it kind of grew on me. I don't know what you think. Do you guys use? Um, hey, look, there's even more people coming in. So, hey, it's a Orthan Can. So I think I know this person usually from LinkedIn, but they're coming in, I think, from Twitch. So, and then yeah, so people are saying that they really need something like this. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would love to hear what you code with, what your favorite font is. I happen to, ligatures grew on me, and this is what I currently use in all my projects. So if you are looking at some of my LinkedIn courses, this may be what you're seeing there. I can't really say. It just depends on the project that you're looking at. So yeah, that's my font history there. All right, so a couple of other interesting things that I saw is this uh, like super interesting CLI tool called Manny. I don't even know how this is pronounced, but it's called Manny. So this is a CLI tool to help you manage multiple repositories. This would be if you're maybe have a, I don't know, a mono repo maybe, or just a bunch of repos, and you're always sort of keeping a local copy on your hard drive. Not everybody works like that, but I know that if you're definitely going to be somewhere where you don't have constant internet access, it's a good idea to just download everything and keep everything uh, local, and then sync up with GitHub on the global repositories. Now, the interesting thing is that it lets you do things like clone like a bunch of things all at once, and it has a really interesting configuration feature. So yeah, this is pretty cool, and you can also run all different kinds of commands on the same repository. And this is not the right, so this is, let me put the proper overlay. So it's mannycli.com. And all kinds of other cool features, like way more than I thought you would need. But if you're managing a project that has a bunch of repos, what you do is you create this YAML file, it's manny.yaml file, and then you kind of define the projects that you're working on, and then include in here, um, what you want to do for each repository. So you can sort of queue up different tasks and different sets of tasks for your repositories, and that helps you take care of different types of things. So you can see here, let's see. So if you run like a git status task, it's going to, uh, you know, give you a set of different things. So git fetch, remote fetch updates, and it's going to do this to all the repos at the same time. This is actually pretty cool. I think that if I was managing a lot of projects, I would use this. I tend to do everything on GitHub, and I just finished this really cool course where I did everything without getting out of GitHub, just using like code spaces or github.dev. And I was able to do that entire course without having to access anything on my local hard drive. It worked really well. GitHub's getting really good at giving you like these tools to automatically just do everything in GitHub, without having to go to your hard drive. And there's a ton of advantages to that. So you'll see when that course comes out. And I talk about how it really cuts down a lot of the installation requirements. So think about when you download or when you're working on a project, you've got to, clone the repo, then maybe you have to do like a fetch or a pull, and then you have to push everything back up. And a lot of times, like whenever you download the repo and you run like npm start, it'll start telling you, oh, there's all these, modules that have gone out of date, and that's always a pain. If you're working in a team and everybody is using the online version, then the online version technically can be updated to have the latest of everything. So I think it's a really big advantage. So yeah, a couple of ideas about the fonts that I'm using. Let's see. Let's hide the Mani CLI and look at a couple of the comments. So JetBrains, good font. Yeah, love JetBrains, my favorite, and definitely Fire Code I have used before. I really love that font. I think before I switched over to JetBrains Mono, I used Fire for a while. Can I use those in CSS? Yeah, they're just regular, files. A lot of them are in Google Fonts, I think, and either way you can still download them, so you can get them onto your hard drive and download them and use them in CSS. Especially useful for if you're using, if you have a website and it has like code blocks, then you can actually use those in there as well, and they'll just be like any other font. You just load them up and call them and set your CSS. So that's a really good use for them. So let's see. Yeah, there's also questions about Manny. Can Manny be helpful for security? Yeah, I think so. I think not directly that it's going to sort of provide some sort of way of doing security, but just the fact that you can configure everything and very quickly have almost like workflows defined that allow you to do a ton of things at once. If you have a lot of repos and you have to maintain a lot of them, I really love the ability for this to kind of simplify what you're doing. Like I said, I tend to go mostly online now, so I'm not sure how much I would do this, but I just thought, man, this is really interesting. I'm often doing, I used to have like all my repos locally, and I would constantly have to like, have a folder with all the repos and constantly fetch this, and this would be doing everything at once and in one place. So that's pretty cool. So let's see. So Javier says, does anyone still use Gulp or Grunt? I need a task runner. Everybody seems to be using VS Code, and I don't know, it does something cut off here. So, yes, I'm not using Grunt so much anymore. I'm not even sure that project uh, is still like active. Grunt, I don't know, could be wrong, but I definitely have a lot of older projects that use Gulp. My go-to right now is from the maker of it's from the maker of Vue.js. He did a platform that I'm not remembering right now, but let's see, what's it called? I even talked about it in a previous episode. I'll tell you in a minute because I know it is one of the things that I cover in here. But yeah, I'm tending to use like more modern framework, more modern libraries that or build tools that give you a little more flexibility. Gulp was great, but whenever it got really big, it became super slow. So I tend to use something more modern that has like hot module replacement, which means it's only getting like when you update a module, or if you're working on separate little pieces like you would when you were working with React or Vue, and you update a small module, it actually allows you to just push just that piece of a module up to the live preview, which means that it'll live preview a lot faster. Whereas Gulp, you would have to sort of reload everything from scratch every time you made a change, and on large projects it made things super slow. So definitely check out some of the newer platforms. I think like everything that's new, like Rollup and even Webpack, which I'm not a huge fan of, just because it always felt a little bit more complicated than it needed to for me. But so I still can't remember the name of the tool that I use now for some crazy reason, but I'm sure I'll remember at some point. So I'll bring it up, and somebody might remember. You know, what I'm why I can't remember that. Okay, so let's talk about something else. Let's see, do I have everything off? So here at LinkedIn Learning, we are always looking for teachers. So I just wanted to, my boss actually asked me, hey, make sure that you mention every once in a while that we're always looking for teachers. So it's a great, really, actually, it's an amazing place to work. If you get an opportunity to teach, you'll get an opportunity to either go now, they're just reopening our campus in California. So a lot of times they'll fly you out there and they treat you super well. And even if you get to record remotely, you have a whole team of support, people that help you, with there's people that edit everything, so you don't have to worry about editing anything. There's people that you get assigned a producer, and the producer kind of helps you, especially if you're brand new. It's an amazing experience. Every one of us, even the people who are like me and work on staff, started out as a contract employee preparing one of those courses, and I can tell you, it's an amazing experience. So the way that you usually do that is by filling out this form right here, and this is the instructor, the very famously instructor form that you get to fill out. Now, famously, I filled this form out 3 times before I heard anything from them. So there's a lot of good questions here that they're going to ask you. But if you're looking for like teaching in technology, we also have like an international group for people who are sort of maybe Spanish or one of our other languages like French, German, even Japanese. I think we have some content in Japanese. You can teach in your sort of original language. And yeah, so this particular form asks you what sort of department you want to be teaching in, and also what kind of topics you're qualified to teach. I think that primarily they look for people who are obviously they can do this stuff. They can teach as well, but we do help you a lot with the teaching. So I think it's a little bit better if you know the stuff as well as if you do have some experience communicating. I think it's pretty cool. I see learning paths. Somebody has a question. I'm not sure. Integrated. I don't know what the IC learning path is. ICs mean. Yeah, so I'm sorry about that, Victor. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll look that up later. I'm not sure what page you're looking at. All right, so when you go to this form, I think the most important stuff is down here at the bottom. I mean, I work in sort of web and software development spaces, and then maybe a little bit on DevOps because I'm on GitHub. But in here, I think that one of the important things is that hopefully you have a video, because the video is going to tell people so much more about your teaching style. And I think authenticity is probably the best thing. But if you have experience doing videos, then they want to see that just to get an idea of how well you have command of the topics that you're talking about. And so I'll give you a tip. So I told you that I applied 3 times with this online form back when it was lynda.com, and it took me 3 times to get in. And I think like the first 2 times, at the time I was working at Tribune Interactive and doing a lot of like flash games and interactive pieces. So I applied the first 2 times to teach things that I was already doing. The last time I'm like, that's not working. So let me just try something else. And I pitched. So you have to, these questions right here. You pitch different things that you want to do. So the third time, I think what worked for me was I looked at the library first, and I tried to look for things, or try to look for things that they didn't have, and then I pitched something that I thought they would want to hear about, not necessarily something that they either had or something that I wanted to teach, but something that would be interesting. So my pitch was actually uh, uh, analytics for designers, for web designers. I'm like, okay, they don't have this. They have stuff on analytics, but an angle on web designers. And once they started talking to me, my first course was on HTML5 and CSS3. So it had nothing to do with the pitch, and that's probably pretty common. Also, another thing, don't be discouraged if you try to do something and you don't get in the first time. Sometimes it takes a few tries to get the attention of people. And I would say that if you want to teach specifically technology topics, just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll try to connect you with the right person. It's good to have all these things thought out. So if you're interested, kind of look at this form, because it does tell you the sort of things that we're looking for. So right here. maybe take a look if you are interested in, say, like data science. Just do a search on LinkedIn for data science and try to look at what we have and see if you can come up with something interesting that is, think of it as a pitch or pitching, how to do a course, uh, or that you want to do a course. So, you see the categories here that we're looking for, and, try to have a video and then try to describe what it is you want to teach about. But just reach out to me if you're interested. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll try to connect you with the right people. That's all I can promise you, though. There's a lot of people always applying, but I'll try to at least connect you and send you in the right direction. So cool. Uh, yeah, Javier, go for it. I don't know if you want to do stuff in Spanish, but we do have opportunities there as well. So yeah, definitely go check it out. I would say look at the form, do a little bit of research, try to type these in, and then reach out to me, and I'll try to connect you with the right people. So I started to learn. Yeah, you know what? That's also another interesting thing about me, that before I was a teacher, I was actually a student. I'm a career switcher, so I was in graphic design. I started out in graphic design, and then I switched over to the web back when the web was very new. Uh, so I actually did teach myself by first buying like a bunch of software, and then also just getting an account. So I was a customer before I became an employee, and I really do believe in kind of the method of teaching and what we were trying to do, because I'm essentially a definite success example of how LinkedIn learning can work for people. And I've been working, before I worked for LinkedIn, I worked on the web for about 10 years. So cool. So let's go over to what I'm going to call the main event. All right, so what I want to do is show you a library called Splide. So it's called Splite, and I'm always looking for shortcuts to creating things. A lot of times, like sometimes I obsess over even the simpler things, but sometimes I find something like this library right here that I really think has all the options I could ever want and way more. This is a really cool library that gives you almost every option for creating different kinds of carousels. And I know some people find carousels, controversial, but I think they're a great way of fitting a lot of data in a small space. And this one actually, it gives you a ton of options for how it looks and then how things are displayed. So you can see here, you can see a little piece of the other ones and it gives you this code snippets that shows you how to set them up here. So this is really cool. I mean, it's a really well made site. This is really what I'm looking for, because I tend to use Bootstrap for a lot of my websites. I just know it really well, and it gives you a lot of nice components. But I've been wanting to do something like this, and Bootstrap really doesn't do it, where I have like multiple items in the same way. And this thing does things like it works with drag and drop. It has usability and accessibility features built in, so you don't have to write that yourself. And It has all these different options for how you set it up. So here, you just like one slide at a time versus doing a certain number of slides. And this one has a rewind. So when it gets to the end, it goes back to the beginning. Once it gets to this number 9 and I hit forward, it actually rewinds. So you could have it loop forever. Or you can have the item focused in the center like this. So really just about every, and like this pagination thing is pretty cool. Just about any feature that I would want in a carousel, I see that this thing has its little bar right here that shows you the progress, which I think is also pretty cool. And you can also have vertical slides, which is awesome. So, Bootstrap doesn't have this level of component. The other thing that I like it, so let's hit get started here, is that you can install it. For installation, you can go with either downloading the files, which you just click right here, or you can go with a CDN, which is what I'm going to use on this demo. Or you can also just run an npm install command and install the library locally into your npm project. And there's also React, Vue, and Svelte versions. So that's pretty cool. I like that. I haven't really tried these, but looks like the latest version only supports Vue 3, so there's not like a Vue 2 option, or you can use the old version for Vue 2, I guess. There's a couple of different themes, not a ton. So if you take a look at these themes right here, you can see that the default, if you don't include a theme, then you get these buttons. And it looks like this doesn't look bad. I mean, if you do use, there's a sky blue theme just with a different set of colors and a different looking arrows. Now, the interesting thing is you can also paste your own SVG code for your own arrows and easily modify what the library looks like if you don't want to use these arrows and you have a better set of arrows. There's also this other theme that has these little dashes, a little bit different kind of blue in these dashes, but everything is so crazy customizable. So for example, oh, also I wanted to say that there's also a video extension. And this is another thing that I wanted to do with my project. So let's see. I wanted to actually have a carousel that has like some of the videos and perhaps have like more than one video so that I can play it. And let's see. Uh, yeah, so you can see the versions of the alternative versions for Svelte, Vue, and React are down here. And there's also like all these ways of extending things with components. And there is, so in addition to the themes, you have like a ton of options. So you could see like, here's a list of all the options that you have. So I created a little sort of demo, and I'm really crazy because the one thing you're not supposed to do is try to sort of light code anything. But if you want to try this along with me or just try this a little bit later, I created this sort of demo code pen, not code pen. I created this swing in my GitHub file. So you have to just go to this URL and then hit the period key, and this will bring up github.dev with a sample of the slide that I am creating right here. So it's a pretty simple little slideshow, and I don't know why. Yeah, so here's the images. You can see that. Another thing is you can use the scroll bar. So right now to like move the slides forward and backwards, I can use the scroll bar, which is another feature that I wanted. And you can see how it's built right here. So this is kind of the finished version of the project. I'm going to come right here and go back to my repository. There's also a start version, so it has everything, how I'm going to show you in a minute. And from here, again, whenever you're in any GitHub repo now, you can just hit the period key, and it's going to load up a project, that particular repo up as a web page. So this is kind of how it starts. This is just, if I were to show you the code, it's just going to be a list. So I have added Bootstrap in here to make it look decent, so get the nice font and everything. But it's essentially, we start off with just a list of images, right? Nothing, no special classes here or anything like that. So if you go to that branch and just hit period, you can start off with this if you wanted to try it out. Now I am going to use this locally, so let's go ahead and switch over to Visual Studio Code. And the reason is I have some, looks like it's not coming up, so I have some tools that let me look at the differences between the things that I'm doing. So the layout here is also a little bit different. So let me show you how this works. Say you can, yeah, Javier has a question. Can you customize the themes? This is the most customizable thing I have ever seen. It's about 30K total. So I don't know if that's really tiny, but it is so featureful that I think I really feel like this is what I'm going to add probably onto my site. So you might see this in my repo.org website coming up soon. Yes, you can customize the themes totally. So let me hide this as well. So to use this, what you do is you start with a number of classes that you add to the project. So let's see, in addition to this, let's see, so what we want to do is add so we have a div here with a class of BG secondary. So you start by adding a splide. So it's like a slide with a P on it. And this is going to break right now the layout. And then you start adding some other additional classes. So I'm going to say I want to add a class of slide and you have to remember, is Splide and 2 underscores, and then the classes look like this. So inside that, then you want to add another class of Splide 2 underscore and then track. So the different pieces correspond to different parts of the interface. And then you want to add a Splide list underneath here. And then all your content would actually go in here. So this is kind of the most minimal version of the slideshow. So once I do that, I'm going to grab all this content here and put it in here, right? And then each one of these list items, you want to have another class. So I'm going to do that. I'm using Option Alt or Command Option to do multi-cursor down to select all these list items. And then I can just create a class for each of these and do Splide 2 underscore and then slide. So now, let's see. Let's go ahead and save this. And we also need to add a class into the list of the UL. So class Splide, oops, I'm sorry. Let's do Splide list actually. So this div right here should have actually gone. So we should have, so this div actually, this Splide list should go in the unordered list. And you know what? Let me make this smaller so I can see a little bit more of this. I need to initialize it, so but I'll do that in a second once I clean up my code. Oh, I just hate messy code. So we have essentially, you know, a few classes, and the way that these classes work, they're designed to do different things. So you can have headlines and text underneath each slide as well by adding some other classes, and you can do all kinds of things. So the slide is the main container of the whole thing. There's also you know, this library is designed to have maybe more than one element showing at the same time. So there's a Splide track element that wraps all of the elements that are currently being shown. So I showed you a different version of the slideshow. Some had like multiple items in the same spot. So that's what the Splide track element is for, containing multiple items if there are multiple items. And then there's the Splide list, which is a wrapper for the list of slides, and then an individual class for each one of these slides like this, right? And then once you do that, you need to initialize it. Now there's a couple of ways that you can initialize this thing, but you can't actually use data attributes like you do in Bootstrap, but you can also create a separate JavaScript file. And just in case you're wondering, where am I loading all this stuff? So I'm using a tool called CodeSwing, which is a Visual Studio Code extension. And CodeSwing has this file called codeswing.json. And this is where I'm doing all my imports. So you can see that I'm importing Bootstrap 5 here, and then as well as the Splide library. So I'm using the CDNs here. You could load these locally if you want to. And then for styles, I'm using Bootstrap as well as the minimal Splide CSS, and then one of the themes so that they look super nice. So that's CodeSwing. It's an extension. You probably need to have that before you pull this up. So in addition to that, I'm going to, I need to initialize things. And like I said, you can use the data attributes if you want to, but you can also just use regular JavaScript. I find that the JavaScript is a little bit easier to read. So I'm going to do a const Splide equals a new Splide, right? So to initialize it, what you need to do is do something like this, and then you can pass along a configuration object afterwards. So let's see, const Splide equals new Splide, and then you pass along the class that you specified right here. And then in addition to that, you can pass, actually after that, you need to do a Splide.mount method, and that will show the slideshow. You can see that it's showing up already over here. Look how nice it is. Like it really, because it noticed that my width was too short to display all the dots. I just stacked them up on top of one another, and actually made this a little bit bigger. So now this whole thing is working pretty well. So that's all you have to do. Of course, you could do, like, you could use this mount command, I think, over here, and it would still work in the same way if you wanted to do it all at once. And then in addition to that, you can pass along a configuration file here. So you pass along an object. The object can have all types of things that you can add in there. So for example, we can say I want to set the type of slide. So the types are slide, which is the default, and then there's a fade. So now when you click on these, they fade instead of showing you, you know, sliding. So the types are slide here, which is what you saw earlier, right? And then there is a loop. I think the loop will, if you click on this, it'll go to the last one, right? If you're on the last one and you click to the right, it goes to the first one. Whereas if you just do slide, I can't click on the left once. I'm already all the way to the beginning, right? So, and you can also do, of course, the fade. Then there's all kinds of additional sort of configuration things that you could do. So you could set like the sizes of things, and let's do a per page item here. So you can say, okay, I want to have 5 elements. I need to put a comma over here. So I want to have 5 of them per page. So now you have exactly what I wanted before. And these are drag and droppable. So look, I'm simulating that by just clicking and dragging on these. So drag and droppable pretty easily. And then it has these dots if you want to. You can hide those if you want. So let's do like, if you don't want to see the arrows, you could just say arrows false, right? You can say pagination false if you want to hide the pagination, the dots at the bottom, and then just use it as a slider that allows people to actually either, so the scroller is not on by default, so I'm going to turn that on as well. So check this out. I just say let's see, wheel, set that to true. So they do have defaults. So now if I put my, I'm using my wheel to like slide through the different pages here. That's pretty cool. Let's see. You can also do an autoplay. Autoplay, if you want them to autoplay, of course. You set that to true. And then it will need a comma over here. It'll, I think it autoplays every 5 seconds or 5,000 milliseconds. So if you want to, you can also control that. You could just say interval and then whatever you want. 1,000 is like a little bit much. So every second it's going to advance. But maybe something like 3 seconds would be good there. Whatever you want to do. You can also ask it to start at a different position. So you can say start at the 4th item instead of the first one. Let's see. And there is all kinds of other things that you can do. The speed lets you adjust like the speed of the actual transition. So I'm going to make it really, you're going to see that when it slides, it's a little bit slower than it used to be. Let's make it really obnoxious, like 1 full second for it to slide to the next. See how it's sliding like a lot slower when it slides? That's what the speed would also do. And you can also control, let's go ahead and put the arrows back in. So I think the arrows go on by default. So there's the arrows, and that is way too slow. So I'll make that 500. Okay, so you can also say when you move, you can say, let's try per move. And then we can say I want to move 2 items at a time instead of moving like the whole, yeah, I don't, actually I'm all the way to the end. So I think it's supposed to try to move. Maybe some of these other settings are killing it. So, or per, I think maybe it needs to be capitalized. So per, let's try that, per move 2. Save this, and then let's try. So now it's moving like 2 at a time instead of 1 at a time. So I've never seen anything so full featured. So I am really going to be looking at doing something like this for my website. So anyways, yeah. if you want to, like I said, I have a version of this that's finished and it's got some other comments. If you want to try it out yourself, just go to that URL that I showed you earlier. So I don't think I can pull it up here right now, but yeah, it's github.com/planet of the web is usually where you can find all my projects. And let's see, how are we doing on time? Let's see, we have like 10 minutes, so that's great for Q&A. Don't have a Q&A graphic. I need to make one so that we can just sort of chill out. I do have an outro graphics. So yeah, Javier really likes it. I totally dig it as well. I totally agree with you, Javier. I don't think I've ever been happier with another carousel type of thing. I mean, the GitHub carousel is fine, but this one is so much better. So I think that so if you go to my website, one of the things that I have done, let's see. So if you go to my website, which is repo.org, I use the carousel up here, but this is just a Bootstrap carousel. I might switch it out to the Bootstrap carousel is fine. I'm already loading Bootstrap. I've done some things where I've modified the Bootstrap carousel so that it does this. It allows me to kind of have side loading carousels. I actually did do a video on that, so you can check my YouTube channel, or I don't know if they're in here. Yeah, I think if you go to videos, it shows you how to hack the Bootstrap carousel. And I actually submitted that into the Bootstrap project, so I'm hoping that they allow you to add some of those things. So a few of the things that I like to add to the Bootstrap carousels are gradients. So sometimes when you want to put text on top of the photo and the photo is too close to the color of the text, you have to put like a gradient, and that's not really obvious. And yeah, the video that you probably want to watch if you want to do those sidebar carousels is this one right here, building a sidebar carousel. And then another thing that I can't stand is the indicators on the Bootstrap carousels don't come, like you have to manually write the code for those, which I find kind of annoying. Also the arrows, you have to manually write the code for those. So I have a video on how to automate that process if you're interested on that. So cool. Let's see if I have any more questions. For some reason, this is really weird. My LinkedIn is not showing me the actual questions, but I can see them in my Ecamm live sort of preview. I don't really see any questions. Yeah, let me know. If you've been watching a few episodes, I would love to get feedback on the show. And you can just reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest place to have a good threaded conversation and talk about whatever you want. All right, next week I have a really interesting episode. I'm checking out a library that helps you create masonry layouts, which are kind of tough to do with CSS. I've also found this really cool, super simple CSS library for very quick projects. And I talked a little bit about Rust. I'll be talking about that next week on my special pre-Thanksgiving episode here on the US. And I found a new framework that is kind of like Astro, but focused on Vue.js. So if you know Astro is like the new big hotness, I've been trying to use Astro, but I haven't really. I don't think that it's quite ready for prime time yet, so I haven't really gotten a chance to do it quite yet. But I saw this other framework that the creators of Vue are developing. So and then in the main event, I'm going to introduce you to something called Windy CSS, which is kind of a clone of Tailwind CSS. So it boasts that it's 100% compatible with Tailwind, but it adds some pretty interesting features. So that's going to be my main event demo. And let's see if there's any questions. Are there any Mobileye deployment, Google Play Store to Azure mobile app deployment Cordova topics lesson? We've had some of those, and I almost had another tool that I saw that was pretty interesting. So I will try to maybe look that up. It's something that uses something called Cordova to let you take your web project and then publish it. So it was something that used Tailwind CSS as sort of the UI, and it was kind of using that library to let you design the application with some additional components. And then it suggested that you use Cordova to be able to deploy that onto these other platforms like Android, iOS, and such. So that would be pretty cool. Yeah, Orhan, thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much. So since I don't have any more questions, it's time for my outro, and then I'll stop. I have no idea how you stop this stream. So I'll see you hopefully next week.